Hello, and thank you for watching. My name is Bradford Roberts, Principal Broker, Founder, and Owner of TR Realty in the Las Vegas area. After watching this video, please be sure to like it as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel. Download the pertinent handouts for this video by clicking the link in the comments below. Now let's get started. Let us next talk about responsibilities of property managers, because you need to know what you're about to get into, right? So first thing I want to talk about is the software that we used called Propertyware. There are many alternatives. I know a lot of companies use different software products. The reason we chose Propertyware, even though it is a really expensive product, is because we think it's the best. It gives our property managers the ability to do both residential and commercial properties, and it has lots of bells and whistles. It has those owner portals and tenant portals that we talked about earlier. I think it's a fantastic program. So we have that. The only catch is that the property managers have to learn to use it. There are training videos, but you've got to take the time to learn the software. I pay for it completely, and it costs a lot of money every month. But we do require the property managers to learn and master that software. If they don't know how to use it correctly, they can make a mess. They can make a mess for accounting. And they can really anger their owners and tenants if the ledgers are not being handled correctly and invoices and that sort of thing. So Propertyware. The second responsibility for a property manager is that the property manager is in charge of the property management agreement and lease preparation. Now, later in this Class 9 video series, we are going to go through the property management agreement, which I always refer to as the PMA, and the lease is going to be part of my Class 8 video series. So you might want to check out the Class 8 videos where I go in through the lease in great detail. But for the purposes of what I'm trying to explain right now, property managers at TR Realty are responsible for the PMA and the lease preparation. So they have to know those forms completely inside out. Third, at TR Realty, property managers are responsible for property inspections and something we call property condition reports, PCRs. So when we talk about property inspections and the property condition reports, which is the form that we use to memorialize the condition of a property prior to move-in or after move-out, those inspections are really, really important. In fact, they are a frequent cause of disputes, complaints, threats, lawsuits, that sort of thing. So if you think about renting a car, most of you watching this video have probably rented a car. You go to your favorite rent-a-car company and they give you access to a car, right? Chances are you're not the first person to drive that car. So there might be some scratches, there might be some dings or some dents on the car. There might be, a stain on the seat or whatever. It's really important when you rent a car, right, that you document those scratches or whatever so that when you return that car, when you're done using it, that the company doesn't try to charge you for the damage. It wouldn't be fair, right? You didn't cause the damage. Well, that is why we do the property inspections, and then we memorialize the condition on that PCR, on that property condition report, so that we can document the condition of the property at the time of move-in, and then compare that to the condition of the property at the time of move-out. And that is how we can legally convert some of the tenant's security deposit. We can legally convert those funds to be able to use them to make those repairs. So we have to be able to prove that the tenant did some damage to the property. Otherwise, we have no legal right to withhold any of their security deposit. So the easiest and clearest way that we can charge a tenant for damage is when we have a documented property condition report upon move-in and another one upon move-out. We compare the two, and the delta, the difference, tells us exactly what damage that tenant caused. Number 4 on my list is the walkthroughs and photos. So very, very closely related to the property inspection. But, property managers should take the time to walk through the property with an incoming tenant, not only documenting, but, teaching them how to use things, where to find things, and of course, photos. I mean, photos are incredibly powerful evidence when it comes to documenting the condition. Good, diligent property managers will document with the PCR and with photographs the move in and the move out. 5th on my list in terms of responsibilities is managing and protecting keys for every managed property. You never label the keys with the property address, right? That way, if the keys were ever lost or stolen, somebody would be able to get into the property. That's not being a good steward of that property. So we need a code system, and the keys need to be left in the TR Realty office. We do not allow our property managers to have keys at home, in their car, on their person, unless they're actively using those keys that day. So at each TR Realty location, we have a locking key safe that only a few people have access to, and the keys for all the properties that we manage need to be stored in that key safe because we are ultimately responsible for them. Next on my list is that when you're a property manager, you have the responsibility of keeping track of the rents and the security deposits. So it's not that you have access to the trust accounts. It's not that you're out there knocking on someone's door to collect rent. But when I'm talking about keeping track of them, I mean electronically in the software that we use in the PropertyWare program. And if the tenant is not paying the rent on time, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but if the tenant's not paying rent, we have to do something about that, right? We can't just buy the tenant's excuses, well, I should be able to pay you next week, that sort of thing. We have to protect the owner. Ultimately, we do work for the owner, not the tenant, so we have to keep track of that. Another responsibility, and I've touched on this a couple of times already, on those portals so that each property owner and each tenant can get in there, they can see their account, they can see their invoices, they can see where they stand, they can see things like the lease expiration date, that sort of thing. Well, who sets those up? The property manager. So that is another responsibility. And not only are we setting up those portals, but it is a property manager's responsibility to constantly monitor those portals, monitor those accounts, make sure that everything is going smoothly and accurately for the owner and for the tenant on the property. Another responsibility is to collect late fees and other fees. And again, I'm not talking about going to the property, getting into a confrontation with someone, knocking on the door. Do you know that there are many companies, property management companies, where the property managers themselves actually have to go out and serve notice on the tenant? We talk about something that's dangerous, right? So we don't do that here. We use an outside company, and we charge the tenant for it. We have the legal right to charge the tenant for serving those notices. But it is our responsibility as a property manager to make sure that late fees are being assessed as per the lease agreement, and that would apply to other fees, such as a bad check fee or an HOA violation, those kinds of things as well. And if the property manager is not doing their job correctly, it can put the owner in a bad situation. And speaking of serving notice, in Nevada, we have something called a 7-day notice. It used to be called a 5-day notice to pay or quit. Now it's called a 7-day notice to pay or quit. And our property managers will serve them on the 6th of the month, because we always give our tenants until the 5th to pay their rent for the current month without incurring any late fees or anything like that. But once we hit the 6th, it is time to represent the owner, to advocate for the owner. And if we don't have the rent on the 6th of the month, we have to go ahead and hire that company that I mentioned a minute ago to serve those 7-day notices. If the 6th falls on a weekend or a holiday, it would be the very next business day when we order those notices to be served. Another responsibility of property managers is, unfortunately, sometimes going to court. If an eviction is ever necessary, it is the property manager whose job it is to represent the owner in court. So it is the property manager who has the most intimate knowledge of what's transpired on the property. It is the property manager who has the access to all of the documents. Therefore, it is the property manager who is charged with representing the owner in court in case an eviction becomes necessary. It is also the responsibility of a property manager to deal with squatters. And as I'm filming this video late 2020, I can tell you that the problem with squatters in Southern Nevada is worse than it's ever been before. And my property managers, unfortunately, have to deal with squatters all the time. Squatters have become very sophisticated. Sometimes they will make fake leases. They will even have quote-unquote proof of making rental payments. Of course, they're not paying anyone. And, the police department is not going to just show up at a property and pull people out of the property. Unfortunately, squatters are probably going to trigger the eviction process in Nevada. All of that becomes a responsibility of the property manager. TR Realty property managers also have to make sure that all of the properties we manage are habitable and in good condition. We are not slumlords at TR Realty. We don't represent dilapidated properties. So that means properties need to be maintained. In the event of some sort of a deficiency, they need to be repaired in a timely manner. All of those are the responsibility of the property manager, up to and including emergencies. And this is why property managers need to have, quote unquote, a hotline, if you will, a phone number, typically a separate phone number than their main phone number, but a phone number where tenants can call 24 hours a day. And they can report an emergency, right? I mean, there could be a leak that if you wait for 8 o'clock the next morning to come around, there could be significant damage on the property, or a fire, or a break-in, or, who knows, a glass break maybe. So there needs to be a hotline where tenants can call. Maybe, it's something you could share with another property manager. I'm not sure how you want to set that up, some sort of a paging system, but you want a hotline system where tenants can call and report some sort of an emergency. Another responsibility of property managers is to enter any bills into the propertyware system in a timely manner. And the reason I mention that today is because I've seen situations over the years where property managers either forgot or weren't diligent enough to put the bills that are incurred on a property into the system. Now, when it comes to accounting is going to look at the bills that are in the system before they pay the owner his funds. So let's say there's a $100 landscaping bill that we had to pay on a particular account. Well, that $100 is going to be deducted from the money that we give the owner owner of the property, right? But what happens if the property manager doesn't put that bill into the system? So now it comes one of the two deadlines that we have to pay the property owners. Our accounting team is going to look in the system. Oh, there's no bill. So we're going to release all the money to the property owner. Well, what happens next week, 2 weeks later, whenever that landscape company comes looking for payment of their bill? Now there's no funds in the account. So now we've got a mess on our hands, right? So it is a very important responsibility of property managers to make sure they enter bills right into the propertyware system in a timely manner. You see, property managers are responsible if they incur or cause any expense to be incurred in TR Realty's name without having sufficient money on reserve. So we're going to talk a little bit later about owner reserve, but just for the purposes of this discussion, when we take an account, the owner deposits some funds with us. It's typically a few $100s per door. That amount of money would go up on an older property. It would go up if the owner is expecting us to pay a lot of their bills, like taxes, insurance, HOA, that sort of thing. On a newer property, if they're not expecting us to pay bills, then the owner reserve funds can be less. But We can't commingle, right? We cannot mix our funds with an owner's funds. That's obviously illegal in Nevada. So we need to make sure that there's sufficient money on reserve, or we can't let any money out. We can't pay an owner, and we can't pay any vendors on behalf of that owner. Another responsibility of property managers is to deal with complaints. Now, when you do property management, complaints are falling like rain, okay? And we cannot ask our owners, our tenants, vendors, whomever, to call the office because you're the office. When you're the property manager, it's on you. It's your account. You need to deal with any owner complaints, tenant complaints, vendor complaints that came in on that property. You cannot pass the buck to the office staff or me, right? You have to be responsible for your own accounts. We also require our property managers to put all accounting instructions in writing. We do not want our property managers walking into the accounting office and spouting out verbal instructions. Hey, remove the late fee on this account. We forgot to pay the vendor. Please write a check, that sort of thing. We don't do that because if the accounting team makes a mistake, then that's on them, right? So we don't take any verbal instructions, only written instructions. We do that by email from the property manager to the accounting team to make sure that we have a paper trail on everything. And speaking of paper trails, when you're a property manager, you better document everything you do. Every phone call should be followed up by an email to the person you talk to. Basically a summary, a recap of what was said on the phone. This is probably the number one thing that gets property managers in trouble, the lack of a paper trail. And when we say the term paper trail, we don't mean literally a piece of paper, right? Paper trail is an expression that means we document everything. We know who we called, when we called them. We know what was discussed. We do as much of our business by electronic means, typically email, as possible so that we have everything in writing. In the event something goes south later, we can go back, we can access our electronic records. And I also want to talk about the concept of discrimination. Remember when I say I'm a man before I'm a broker? Well, obviously there are all kinds of laws, both state and federal laws, against discrimination. We have fair housing laws. We have fair housing amendments that were passed. They make perfect sense to me. They should have been, they are, and we adhere to them very, very strictly at TR Realty. But the reason I say I'm a man before I'm a broker, it's because at TR Realty, we are staunchly anti-discrimination, not because of the laws, because it's the right thing to do. Everyone is equal. I didn't say everyone's the same, but everyone is equal, and everyone deserves to be treated equally, regardless of race, religion, creed, color, familial status, gender identity, immigration status. None of those things matter or should matter. Everyone is equal. So I can tell you right now, as the broker owner of this company, I staunchly oppose any kind of discrimination, any kind of whiff of discrimination. We have all kinds of redundant systems in place to track these things and make sure that none of our property managers can discriminate in any way. That is a really, really big deal to me. Since diversity is one of the cornerstones of our organization, I will not tolerate even a whiff of discrimination in this company. And lastly, in this segment, I'd like our property managers, and for those of you watching who may be future property managers at TR Realty, to think about eventually becoming a CPM. CPM stands for Certified Property Manager. And it's another advanced designation that you have to earn. You can't just write a check. You have to earn it. You have to take classes. You have to take exams. You have to achieve a certain level of status as a property manager. But I can tell you that when you do achieve that status, and you can put that CPM acronym on your business card, you will stand head and shoulders above your competition. I would like to thank you for watching this video. I hope it was informative for you. If you are licensed with another brokerage in Southern Nevada and would like to talk with me, please text me or visit our website. See you next time.